Macron convenes emergency meeting as U.S. and Russian officials head to peace talks. In a major diplomatic development, French President Emmanuel Macron has called an emergency summit in Paris with key European leaders to discuss the evolving situation in Ukraine. The meeting aims to solidify a unified European response to the latest peace talks between the United States and Russia, which notably exclude both European nations and Ukraine. The urgency of this summit stems from recent reports that U.S. and Russian officials are meeting in Saudi Arabia to negotiate a possible end to the war. Led by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, these talks have raised serious concerns among European leaders, as they could result in decisions that fail to represent the interests of Ukraine or its allies in Europe. Europe's concerns over exclusion. European leaders are alarmed that these high-stakes negotiations are taking place without their direct involvement. British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has stated that any peace process excluding European representation is bound to fail. The UK has offered to act as a bridge between the United States and the European Union to ensure that European security interests are taken into account. The exclusion of Ukraine from these discussions has been particularly contentious. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has strongly opposed any negotiations that do not involve his government, arguing that Ukraine's fate cannot be decided without its direct participation. His concerns are shared by European officials, who believe bypassing Ukraine undermines its sovereignty and international law. Further adding to tensions, U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg has dismissed European criticism, suggesting that European leaders have failed to propose viable solutions of their own. This statement has only deepened the divide between the U.S. and its European allies on the issue of Ukraine's future. Macron's emergency summit. In response to these developments, Macron has invited German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and other European leaders to Paris for an informal yet urgent discussion. The primary focus of the summit is to ensure that Europe does not become a passive observer in a conflict that directly impacts its security and stability. Among the topics on the agenda are potential European security guarantees for Ukraine, increased military and financial support, and the possibility of deploying European peacekeeping forces. Macron has long advocated for a stronger European defense framework within NATO, emphasizing that Europe must take more responsibility for its own security, rather than relying solely on the U.S. The stakes for Ukraine and Europe. The Paris summit comes at a critical moment for Ukraine, as the war continues to rage with no clear resolution in sight. While some Western nations have pushed for a negotiated settlement, Ukrainian officials insist that any peace deal must include the full restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity. At the same time, European leaders are wary of any agreement between Washington and Moscow that might involve territorial concessions, which could set a dangerous precedent for international conflicts. The road ahead. As U.S. and Russian officials continue their discussions in Saudi Arabia, the decisions made at Macron's emergency meeting could play a crucial role in shaping Europe's response. A united European front could pressure the U.S. to include its allies in the peace process, ensuring that Ukraine's interests are fully represented. The coming days will be decisive in determining whether Europe can assert its influence in the negotiations or if the future of Ukraine will be decided without its direct input. Regardless of the outcome, one thing is clear: European leaders are determined to have a say in shaping the resolution of the war.